Hi, this is Kelly from Plaid, Let's Paint Art Lessons, and today we're going to be talking all about still lifes. I'm so excited to share this lesson with you today. I've gone to plaidonline.com/letspaint and I've printed off these great sheets that will help you with your lesson. You should print them off as well. On here, we've got an example of what I'm going to be painting. It tells the different techniques that we're going to be learning about, composition and the rule of thirds, as well as values, tints, and shades. There's a supply list. We also have some information about the artist that has inspired this lesson. His name is Wayne Thiebaud, and he's very well known for painting pastries, candy, and all kinds of yummy treats. We also have a link to our kit that we've put together to help you paint this project as well as others. It includes 23 bottles of paint, a 2-ounce bottle of Mod Podge, and 10 brushes. We've also included a color wheel for you to reference during the lesson, as well as a project palette that we suggest using, but you can always choose your own colors. There are also some sheets that help you to figure out how to turn shapes into 3D forms and where the lighting would be on each of those kinds of basic shapes. So now that we've taken a look at those things, let's get started. I'm going to go ahead and tell you all the supplies that we need for this project. I've pulled out some colors from my Apple Barrel acrylic paint kit. I've pulled out some black, cobalt hue, cool blue, flag red, jack-o'-lantern, lime tree, bright yellow, and white. I also have some paper towels to help me clean my brushes. I have my printables from plaidonline.com/letspaint, a cup of water. I'm going to be working on a 12 by 12 inch canvas today. I have a pencil to draw my candy still life, a palette to put my paint in and mix it, an assortment of different sizes of brushes from my kit, as well as some candy. I've also covered my surface in a piece of paper, and I would suggest that you cover yours too. Even though our Apple Barrel paints are easy to clean up, it's always nice to have that extra layer. So now that you know what we need, I'm gonna go ahead and pour my palette and get started. Now that I've got my Apple Barrel paint poured into the palette, I'm ready to get started painting. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to draw my still life onto my canvas. If you feel comfortable drawing yours on paper first to practice, go right ahead. I'm going to be using a compositional technique today called the rule of thirds. This helps to arrange your items on your canvas or on your paper in a way that helps with eye movement and keeps things from being right in the middle where your eye gets static looking at the composition. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to divide my canvas into thirds vertically and horizontally. And this doesn't have to be exact. If you would like to use a ruler, go ahead, or you can just freehand it. So with the rule of thirds, these lines act as spaces to put the objects into your drawing. So the best places to put things are where the lines intersect and along the lines. So I'm going to start by drawing the sucker in my still life. I'm going to put it where these lines intersect here. It's kind of an elongated, rounded shape. And then it has a band going across. Shorten that just a little bit. And then I see the sucker stick coming out. And it comes out at an angle. And has a rounded end. Okay, next I'm going to draw some of the circular candies. And the circles change depending on which way the candies are leaning and where they are in space. So some of the circles are a little bit more elongated and some are more round. Okay, so these two are sitting on this cross section of lines. Then I'm going to put some more round candies down here. This one's tilted and it is really round, almost circular. When I'm drawing, I like to make things go off of the page in some areas. It just gives a little bit more visual interest, and it makes the viewer think that this is just part of a section and that there's more happening outside of the picture plane. I'm also going to draw in the shape of the shadows. So my light source is coming from this direction, so my shadows are on the opposite side. Okay, I have that sketched out and now I'm ready to start painting. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my background. I want my background to be a vibrant blue color. You can make yours whatever color you would like to, but I just really like blue, so that's what I chose. I picked up my largest flat brush, and that's what I'm going to use to paint the background because it is a pretty large area and that big brush is going to help me cover it. So as I work with my blue, I also am going to pull some white into it just to add a little bit more interest to the color and break up some of that space, not make it so flat with one color. The artist that we're inspired by was very well known for using his paints in a way to where it almost looks like icing or frosting. And I want to get that same effect by being able to see the brush strokes and some of the texture in my background. And I'm just cutting in right along the objects and the shapes that I drew for the shadows. And I have lollipops and round candies, but you could really use whatever kind of candy you have at home, whether it's chocolate bars, gummy bears, hard candies. They all make really good subjects because usually candy is very bright and colorful and fun to paint. And I'm just alternating, putting some blue and some white. Some places it's bluer, some places it's a little bit lighter, and that's okay. I like to see those brush strokes. And I like it to have a little variation in the background. And again, I'm just cutting in around the objects, making sure to not paint over where I drew the shadows. I'm also going to go ahead and paint my edges. That just makes the painting feel a little bit more finished, especially if you're going to hang it on a wall or put it on a shelf, which I'm sure you're going to want to do because these are going to turn out fabulous. I'm going to finish painting my edges. Go ahead and pause the video and finish yours, and then we'll move on. Now that I have my edges painted, I'm going to go ahead and start on the shadows. For that, I'm going to get my number 6 flat brush. I'm going to take some more of that blue that I was using in the background and a little bit of black. Mix those together. So underneath my candies, where I have a shadow, I'm going to cut in right next to the candy. Then I'm going to get some of that paint off of my brush, take a little bit of cobalt hue, and blend it right into that wet paint onto my canvas. I'm going to take some of the blue from my background. And blend that out just a little bit so that the shadow naturally fades away. So I'm going to use that same method for the rest of my shadows. Turn my canvas a little bit so that I can get to those. Getting these dark shadows underneath my candies are really going to make my candies pop out when I start to paint them. So again, I'm just starting off with some black in my background color and then switching to some cobalt blue. And then going back to my original background color and just a little bit of white to help it blend. So you want those shadows to gradually blend out into the background. If it starts getting too dark in some places, you can always rinse your brush off and go back to the lighter color to blend that a little bit more. Okay, so I have my shadows in now. Now it's time to start painting some candy. I'm going to go ahead and paint the local color of all of my candies. Local color is just the color of the object without worrying about any of the lights and dark. Go ahead and pause your video and paint yours. Now that I have my local colors painted in, I'm going to go ahead and start working with the lights and darks. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to start with some black, and I'm going to mix a little bit of black with some yellow. The bottoms of my candies are the darkest part because they're furthest away from my light source. So I'm going to paint in some of that black and yellow right at the bottom of my candy. I'm going to clean off my brush and then I'm going to go into just yellow. I'm going to take the yellow and I'm going to paint up next to where I made that stripe of darker yellow. And I'm going to feather it out with my brush so that it blends. Sometimes it helps the colors to blend to wipe your brush bristles onto a paper towel and go in with a bit of a dry brush. Okay, now that that's blended in, I'm going to do the same to the rest of my candies. I'm going to get this other yellow one up here. So it is behind the green candy. So it's also going to be a little bit darker where those overlap. Again, cleaning off my brush and just going back with the yellow. Next, I'm going to move on to the green candies. Again, I'm going to use a little bit of black. And I'm going to mix some green into the black, make a darker green. Again, anytime that you mix black in with a color, that's called a shade. So I have my darker shade of green, and then I cleaned off my brush and put just some plain green on it, and I'm blending those together. Do the same on my green candy, the top. Same thing, I'm going to take just some plain green and blend that out. Okay, now on to the orange. A little bit of orange and black right at the bottom. So I have the shadows on my round candies. Now I'm ready to add in some highlights. For my highlights, I'm going to use some white and a little bit of the local color. So I'm going to start with my yellow candies. I'm mixing some white and yellow, and that's a tint. And I'm going to put this along the top part of my candy. Now I'm going to do the same thing on my green candies. White and green to make a tint. The yellow was so light that I didn't really have to blend it out with just some plain yellow, but because the green is a little bit of a darker color, I'm blending that out with just some plain green. Next, I'm going to do the orange. So white and a little orange. While that dries, I'm going to move on to my sucker. I'm going to start with the sucker stick. Just to make sure that that's nice and straight, I'm going to take a little bit of my background blue and go right up next to it. Try to keep a really steady hand. Now I'm going to make a little bit of gray with some black and white. And just on the bottom edge of the stick, I'm going to paint a little bit of a shadow. I'm going to do the same thing on that side that I did on the top of the sucker stick and use a little bit of my background blue. To neaten up that line and make sure that it's really straight. Now I'm ready to start looking for the lights and darks onto my sucker. One thing that helps me whenever I'm looking for lights and darks is to kind of squint my eyes a little bit, and that helps break down the values and make them a little bit clearer. So when I do that, I see some darker red on the bottom side of my sucker. So I mix some black and red. I'm going to blend that out with just some red. I also see a darker value on the left side of the top. I see a darker value underneath the band of the sucker. And then it's also just a little bit darker on the right side, the bottom. And right above the band on the right side. So blending that out with just plain red. Okay, so for lighter areas on my sucker, again, I'm going to mix a tint, so white and red. And I see a lighter value at the bottom of my sucker, kind of in the middle. Along the band. And then at the top center part. Also see one more dark part, and that's right around where the stick goes into the lollipop. Now we're really going to get these popping because they're shiny, and we're going to get some pure white highlights on the candies. So I look for spaces where the light hits it and makes a glare. See much of. So I also get some of those on the lollipop. So I'm going to get those in right now. And that wraps it up. I hope that you enjoy getting creative with candy today. I really liked blending all those colors together. For more ideas and inspiration, go to plaidonline.com/letspaint.